Do you have one of these things? I bet you do, or something similar. How about one of these things? I bet you do, or something similar. How about one of these things? Maybe, maybe not, right? But if you're like me, you want to know how much power you've drawn from your battery and how much power you've put back into your battery during the charging cycle. What you might not know is that you can charge this thing with this thing. And all you have to do is connect the output of the power supply to the Anderson power poles of the battery. But like I said, I like knowing how much power I've drawn from the battery and how much power I'm putting back into the battery. So in comes this thing. And if you are half-witted, you can see that there's a source side and a load side. So naturally, you plug the source, the power supply, yeah, into the source side, and then you plug the load into the load side when you're charging, right? Did you see that? This thing is getting power, but the power supply is not on. Power supply is showing power in it, but it's off. What does that mean? It means that this thing, even though it tracks consumption, it does not prevent the backflow of power. There's no diodes in here. Let's break this thing open and look at it to be sure. I haven't done that yet, but you can see that power supply is off. I'm showing power at the LED of the power supply, and 13.47 volts, that's the power on the battery. And I can show you that to be true because I can unplug the battery and haha, disappears, and power supply no longer shows power in it. That tells me there cannot be any diodes in here preventing backflow. Let's open it up, take a look just to be sure, but dollars to donuts, nothing in there other than the current measurements circuit. I'm sure to lose those sooner than later. Some kind of obviously plastic shell. No markings on it, so I don't know what kind of plastic that is. Guess it doesn't really matter for what we're doing. It actually has input and output sides on the PCB. You can tell this is a two-sided job here, although it is soldered through, so I can't take it apart without desoldering it. So all the circuitry is in this board, and I can't say for sure that there isn't a diode in there, but I don't see one. And all of the input happens to this board. Input and output happens to this board. That's a big fat resistor. I can't make out what else is on that board, but yeah, I'm not gonna disconnect this. I'm not gonna desolder this just to take a peek because I don't have the time for it right now. So if we look at the circuit build out here, we see that the positive is actually right on through. There's a solder spot on there for the positive. It has a big glob of solder on it, and then the only thing that's not passed through is the negative side. It has this resistor in the center. Let's get a multimeter out, measure that puppy. Yeah, the thing is labeled a resistor, but it's not showing much resistance, if any. What? When it shows it's like 0.4, 0.5 ohm. So maybe this is just a zero value resistor for the sake of having maybe some kind of a fusible element in the middle. I don't know if you guys are going to be able to see that very well, but I'll try to zoom in and take a picture of that and insert it in here. It says R21, implying that this is the 21st resistor in the circuit or in the board. The other thing that's interesting is that the chassis claims 150 amps. I'm no engine nerd. I'm no electrical engineer, but I don't see enough current carrying capacity on this PCB for 150 amp. I've seen circuits that are rated for far less at 12 volt have way more thicker traces and heavier traces. So yeah, this seems suspect. none of the components on this board, the bottom board appears to be the little board, if you will, appears to be the one that does all of the electrical carrying capacity. And it looks like this is just sending sensed information up here for it to get displayed. But none of the components are, the only component here big enough to carry even remotely 50 amps or larger of current is that big ass resistor that you have there. And you can barely read it. It says R001 5%. So it's a resistor, but look at that. You know, all the other components are surface mount. They don't appear to be beefy enough to handle any real current. There's a chip on there. There's an IC on there of some kind. I'm guessing that's the circuit doing the math. Ooh, maybe I do see a... Okay, I see one diode on here. There we go. You can barely see it between the pins there. I'll see if I can highlight it in the video. But that diode is tiny. There's no way in hell that thing handles more the amperage that this thing is actually letting through. Dollars to donuts. That the one diode that I see here is specifically for dealing with sending information part or the calculation part, and not on the actual big side of actually letting the big pixies go through. So when I'm home, what I do is I charge my Bioenno by doing the whole putting it here. You can see that it lights up already. Anyhow, I was charging this thing. We had a nasty power outage. We were out without power something like 12 hours because of a snowstorm. And I came out at in the early hours of the morning, woke up, decided, well, what the heck? I can play radio. If I can't sleep, I can play radio. I'll use my battery. And I came out to find the circuit lit up, and my brain said, well, the power's out. What's going on? And then, you know, I turned off the rocker switch on the power supply, and it was still showing power. And then I proceeded to play radio, and I only got about half of the life I was expecting out of the battery while playing radio. Not a big deal. It was time to go back to sleep anyways, but I was scratching my head as to why. And my guess is that there is enough draw from here that this thing was burning whatever power this thing was feeding through. I came back out after the power came back, turned everything back on, charged the thing. Sure enough, this thing took just shy of 12 amp hours of juice, and you know, we're back to normal. But that made my head scratch, and I had to go play with this and sort it out. That is all I have on this one. There's a video right there that you might be interested in. And if this is part of the Monday Night Ham Radio or Thursday Night Ham Radio playlist, then don't forget to follow the next video in the playlist. 7-3, everybody. Catch you down the log.